TSS Spangler, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to dig a little deeper now into the state of Michigan with political science professor at Oakland University, David DiIulio. He's also the author of Michigan Government, Politics, and Policy. Mr. DiIulio, let's talk about 2016. The president won narrowly. Where did he win? How did he get the victory in the Wolverine State?
Well, good morning. And I would say that when the margin in 2016 was less than 11,000 votes, you can find that margin in a lot of different places across our state. And I would point you to a few. One is simple turnout. And that is for places where Republicans generally do well, turnout was up. We in Michigan would refer to those places as up north. So if you drew a line sort of halfway across or halfway down the lower peninsula, anything north of that is up north. That's a strong Republican territory. Not many voters up there, but Trump improved on Romney's vote totals, and turnout was up sometimes 3, 4, 5 points in some of those counties. On the flip side of that, in Wayne County, home of Detroit, turnout was mainly flat. But in that county, Hillary Clinton received 80,000 fewer votes than Barack Obama did just 4 years before. So Democrats in Wayne County simply didn't show up for Hillary Clinton. Another factor is, and I think that your viewers should hone in on this in the next 6 weeks or so, places like Macomb County, Michigan, made famous 40 years ago in the 1980s with the Reagan Democrats. Those were individuals who considered themselves Democrats but voted for Ronald Reagan because they liked his stances on some particular issues, but generally liked his demeanor, they thought he was tough, they thought he stood up for the little guy. And Trump had great success with those folks in Macomb County, blue-collar workers, union workers. And in that county alone, Trump got 35,000 more votes than Mitt Romney did just 4 years before, and Clinton got 35,000 fewer votes than Obama did. Now, does that mean that there are 35,000 people in Macomb County that voted for Obama and then voted for Trump? No. But 5, 6, 7,000? Sure. And the rest is created in turnout differences. Some of those Obama voters didn't show up, and Trump brought out some folks that hadn't voted 4 years before.
The people that you said voted for President Obama and then switched and voted for President Trump, are they up for grabs this time around?
That's a great question, and I think that that's one of the outstanding questions, one of the uncertain questions that remains here in Michigan, to see if Trump can repeat the coalition of voters that he put together in 2016. And I think some of them certainly are still with him. Trump's base is, as you know, heavily white working class folks, and that's not the only folks that vote for Donald Trump, of course, but in places like Macomb County, Saginaw County, those are 2 of the 12 counties that had pluralities vote for Obama and then vote for Trump in 2016. Those folks are still with the president. His strength in the base of white working class voters is incredibly strong here in Michigan.
So, David DiIulio, then what does the vice president need to do that differently than Hillary Clinton? You touched on it a little bit. And do you see signs that the campaign is doing that?
Sure. I would point to, again, a couple different factors. One is try to hold down Trump's advantage in places like Macomb County. And in your conversation with Todd Spangler, he mentioned Joe Biden was in Warren just a couple weeks ago. That's an attempt to try to eat into Trump's lead in those kinds of areas. And couple that with increasing turnout in Wayne County, specifically the city of Detroit, that can put Biden in a really strong position come November 3rd. And again, it's no surprise to see Senator Harris visit the city of Detroit in the last couple of days. And those are things that Hillary Clinton never did in 2016. That campaign made a terrible mistake strategically by really much ignoring the state of Michigan until the very last minute, and by then it was too late. So it's try to eat into the lead that Trump has with some of those blue-collar union workers, increase turnout in Detroit, in general, get their voters to the polls better than the Democrats did 4 years prior.
Want to invite our viewers to join this conversation. If you're supporting the Biden-Harris ticket, dial in at 202-748-8000. If you're supporting the Trump-Pence ticket, your number this morning, 202-748-8001. If you're undecided or supporting another, 202-748-8002. And if you are in Michigan, we want to hear from you. Michigan voters, 202-748-8003. So, Mr. DeLeo, what is the president's campaign doing to try to recreate the win from 2016?
Well, he's continuing some of the messaging that was successful for him in 2016. And again, I'll refer back to your conversation with Todd. A lot of it is about trade and manufacturing. That was as I said, a very successful message that resonated with voters here in Michigan. And I think that he's going to continue to do that, especially around the USMCA, the renegotiated NAFTA, that I think the president's going to come here and say, I told you 4 years ago that I was going to get rid of NAFTA and put something else in place that's better, and I did that. He's going to claim credit for that, and it's too early to know if it is better. But I would note that in an interview, Vice President Biden admitted that he thought that USMCA was better than NAFTA. And I think that the Trump campaign may try to use those words against the former vice president.
Front page of the New York Times this morning, Trump struggles on GOP turf as women favor Biden in poll. Are you seeing this play out in Michigan as well?
Well, we already have to some extent. There were between 2016 and 2018, there was a pretty big shift. And a lot of that shift was seen in well-educated suburban female voters in places like Oakland County. And those are, and Oakland County is an affluent place with white-collar workers, pretty affluent, highly educated. And we saw in 2016 more of those voters mark their ballot for Donald Trump than many thought. But then in 2018, the vast majority of them did not support Republicans here in Michigan in the midterm, especially in our statewide state races for governor, secretary of state, attorney general, and saw Democrats sweep the top of the ticket, flip 2 congressional seats in Michigan, the 8th and the 11th. Congresswoman Slotkin and Congresswoman Stevens, respectively, won those districts. One was one defeated an incumbent, one won an open seat, and much of that has been attributed to many of those, again, educated, affluent, suburban women leaving Republicans and voting for Democrats. So we've seen that. The question is, can the president get some of those voters back?
We'll go to Nancy, who's in Rochester, Michigan. Good morning, Nancy.
Hello there. Yes, home of Oakland University. I'm just calling to say that I'm one of those educated women from U of M, and I am a Trump person. I liked him the last time I voted for him, but this time I am so pleased with what he's done. Like in Michigan, the Pulse of Michigan, I feel like I go down to the boat marinas down in Detroit on Lake St. Clair and that, and all you see is Trump signs, Trump flags from the boat. And we've had huge boat parades that just for Trump, and they just nonstop. I feel the enthusiasm here in Michigan. I was a little down maybe a month or so, 2 months ago, but not now. I feel that there's been a big change in Michigan in the last month towards Trump. And there's also, they've got things going where there's going to be car caravans up the state here for Trump. And the ground game here in Michigan is much better than the Democratic ground game.
Let's talk about that. Professor?
Sure. I think Yeah, sure. I think Nancy makes a great point about the strength of Trump's base. There are his support is his supporters are fervently for the president, and I'm not sure that that's the case with the Biden campaign. Certainly, Democrats are for him, but the veracity with which the Trump supporters support their candidate is not matched, and whether it's flags or signs, and I'll tell you that one defining point for me in 2016 was driving through the middle of the state and seeing Trump sign after Trump sign after Trump sign, and it had to make you think, boy, there might be something to this, that the Trump folks think they can win Michigan. And he did. It was by a razor thin margin, but he won, obviously, and it does remain to be seen whether or not he can repeat that, or the support that he has, the enthusiasm that he has with his base, if that's enough to put him over the top again here in Michigan. And what the caller referred to may be what we're seeing lead to tightening in those polls that you and Todd mentioned. And the Free Press poll has Biden up 8, but there are others that have Biden up 2 or 3. One recent poll has Trump up 2 here in Michigan. So it's close.
Nisi in Detroit. Good morning. Welcome to the conversation.
Good morning. When Biden was VP, he saved the auto industry. And Donald Trump said, let the auto industry fail. If we would have let the auto industry fail, then America would have failed, because Michigan is the place where you got union jobs to help grow your family, but at the same time, Trump said, let it fail. Now, that was my statement. My question to you is, what is it that Donald Trump has done for Michiganians in the past 3 years and a half, almost 4 years? I haven't seen any growth. I live in Farmington Hills.
Professor,
thank you, and have a blessed day.
Okay, Nisi. Professor DiIulio.
Is that a question? Is that a question for me or for a Trump supporter? I think the president's team would point to, first and foremost, to the renegotiation of NAFTA for folks in Michigan. I think that they would point to the strong economy that everybody agrees was in place. All of the major indicators of economic growth were quite high early in 2020, then to be derailed by COVID-19. And you hear that to some extent in Trump's messaging when he talks about the great economy that we had, and then it obviously faltered with coronavirus. But I think that they will point to those as successes.
The president has raised concerns about mail-in voting. What is the process for mail-in voting in the state of Michigan?
Sure, we have no excuse absentee ballots here in Michigan. We don't have. It's not all mail like some Western states have, but we do have no excuse absentee balloting. That is, frankly, new to the state of Michigan. Voters adopted a constitutional amendment in 2018 to move to no excuse absentee. And we are seeing, as expected, a huge rise in the number of absentee ballots that have been requested, well over 2 million. Some of the clerks here in Michigan estimate that we'll see roughly half of ballots cast in November come through the absentee process.
What are the requirements for getting your absentee ballot in?
Well, that is a point of contention here in Michigan at the moment. The general requirements are pretty standard. One has to request an absentee ballot that is accompanied by a signature, and then when that ballot is received, it's filled out. You have to sign it again, put it into a privacy sleeve, and send that into your clerk. Well, the questions that we're seeing across the country about mail delays and counting of absentee ballots are the same here in Michigan. So there's a push to get people to, if they want to use an absentee ballot, to get them returned early and or to drop them off at a clerk's office or at a drop box that are secure drop box that are placed around the state, usually at City Hall and places like that. But we're also seeing a court challenge about when those ballots must be in to be counted. The law in Michigan is that they must be received by Election Day, but a group of they're unions. A group of unions under the umbrella of another organization have challenged in court and won a court victory just in the last week or so that would allow those absentee ballots to be counted well beyond Election Day, I believe up to 2 weeks. So with an election result that is likely to be close, and having potentially have absentee ballots counted well after Election Day, we here in Michigan may not know the result for many, many days. And I would say that court challenge that I mentioned is the plaintiffs are an organization that their board is heavy union presence. The defendants are actually the state of Michigan and the Democratic Secretary of State. And they have said they're not going to appeal that decision. Well, the Republican legislature here in Michigan wants to be able to join that lawsuit as a party so that they can challenge that decision up the chain. And they've been denied that so far, but there is an appeal on the question of whether or not Republicans can join the lawsuit coming up here pretty soon. We'll see if they're able to and what might transpire if more courts get involved.
Decker, Michigan. Brian, good morning to you. Who are you supporting this November?
Oh, Donald Trump for sure.
Okay.
I'd like to ask the professor a question. I'd like to know what's been done in Michigan, my state, about correcting the voter fraud. If we remember back to 2016, the Green Party candidate asked for a recall. The precincts they looked at voted at 125%. I think that if the precincts voted 100%, Trump wins big. Thanks a lot.
Professor?
Well, there's a couple things, and you know, the caller is right that in 2016 there were questions about poll book totals matching the number of votes that had been cast, and in fact we saw that in our August primary here in Michigan when a significant percentage of precincts in the city of Detroit did not have their poll book totals match their the votes cast. And under Michigan law, when that occurs, no recount is possible. So, and that's a problem. Because of that, the Secretary of State's office has stepped in and said that they're going to try to help the clerk in Detroit and her team be ready for November 3rd. In terms of voter fraud, well, I mean, that may be what has happened there. Does it happen? Sure. Does it happen as much as the president says? I don't believe it does. But there's no question that people have tried to cheat the system. And I'll point you back to our August primary when according to the Democratic Secretary of State's office, about 900 people tried to vote absentee and vote in person. And maybe that's somebody. Maybe we can give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they didn't think that their ballot was counted when they sent it in, or maybe they forgot they sent it in and they showed up at the polls. But it was discovered that these 900 roughly people tried to vote twice.
Olympia, Washington. Joe, you're supporting the president. Good morning. Question or comment?
It's a comment.
All right, go ahead.
Comment, yeah. Okay. I support Trump. I'm 84 years old, and I've voted Democrat for the majority of my life. My family and community have been mainly Democratic also. But as a boy, my father taught me the dangers communism and socialism have for our republic with democratic government based on individual freedom, free speech, privacy, religion, and so forth. Now the Democrats are accepting a socialist ideology that has a Marxist socialism that uses violence, assault, killing, and stabbing of individuals and police, and destruction, arson, and robbery of private property in an effort to overthrow our democratic republic. Success by the left means a government of unlimited power above and beyond our Constitution, and trades the power of our people for an overpowering central government. Our Constitution provides a basis for a rule of law. If the Constitution is considered just a piece of paper, it'll no longer be a basis.
All right, Joe. Professor DiIulio, the president's remarks and comments about law and order, about socialism in this country, not just something that appeals to the base, perhaps. Perhaps it appeals to older Americans.
Well, and I think Joe in Olympia is indicative of many Americans who think maybe that the Democratic Party has left them, that they thought they were squarely in the Democrats' camp, but have seen the party maybe shift left over the years, and now are looking for a new home. And folks like Joe have found it with President Trump.
I also want to get your reaction to the Wall Street Journal and the president yesterday promising $200 drug benefit. The Wall Street Journal says millions of seniors would get a discount card. The cost is likely in the billions. How does this play in Michigan?
I think it plays in Michigan as it does across the country, where folks are concerned about health care generally. Prescription drug costs have been an issue for years and years and years. And it's an attempt by the White House, by the Trump campaign. I shouldn't conflate those, but it's a proposal that, if it goes through, would have meaningful impact, I think, for a lot of Americans. Whether or not it causes them to change their mind and who they're going to vote for, that's an open question.
Judy's in Leland, Michigan. Hi, Judy.
Hi. I'm definitely voting for Biden-Harris. I'm very concerned about the rule of law under Trump. I'm so concerned that I have every month written a letter by hand to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. I have constantly said we must not do the political thing. We must do the right thing. And I've never done that before in my life. But I feel so strongly about the rule of law and our democracy that that's what I've been doing. Thank you.
Professor DiIulio, your reaction to hearing that from Judy?
Yeah, I think it's great that Judy is taking the opportunity that is afforded to her and engaging in her democratic system. I would also say that I think you could find a number of Trump voters who would make almost the same statement about being concerned about the rule of law.
Battle Creek, Michigan. Edward, good morning to you.
Yes, well, I'm concerned as well about the transfer of power, and I just cannot believe what Trump said. What was it, yesterday or the day before? I think it was yesterday in a press conference. He said, and I've got the quote pretty much, it said, I've been complaining about the ballots, and we got to get rid of the ballots. And then he went on, and he said it wouldn't be so much a peaceful transfer of power as a continuation of power. That kind of rhetoric, to me, sounds fascist. Now, I know that the right is going to call Biden a socialist. Biden is a moderate Democrat. He was the most, I don't know what you call it, centrist Democrat that we nominated. But Trump's saying, the quote is, get rid of the ballots. Is that not what he said in the press conference? And then he said a continuation of power, not a transfer of power. Is that what he said?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head, Edward, but your point being, we'll take it. Professor DiIulio.
Right, and I don't have the full quote in front of me either, but I don't believe that was the entirety of the statement. And I think that, it was not a very good answer to the question that he was asked. And I think you read a part of a National Review piece earlier in the show, and I think that really points to a number of important components here. And one is that, as we said, that wasn't the full statement, and you have to kind of read. If you're going to give the president the benefit of the doubt, you have to read between the lines a little bit to see that what he was talking about when he said there's no transfer. He was, I think, saying that because he thinks he's going to win and that there'll be no transfer, there'll be a continuation because I'm going to win. Of course, he didn't put those words in there. And again, we have to maybe think about what was going through his mind, which is always a tough thing to do, right? We're not mind readers.
Eve in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Hi, Eve.
Good morning, C-SPAN. Professor, I would like to know, I just heard the young lady that called in about all the signs of the Trumps out everywhere. I don't see that many here in Grand Rapids, but at the same time, everybody know that the peacock, flucks his feathers, and we can see it from a mile away. But at the same time, can that peacock do anything? I would like to say also that the reason why Hillary did not win the last election here in Michigan is because the East Side did not vote. And when the East Side does not vote, we do not get a Democrat governor, Democrat anything on Michigan that does not go purple or blue. But I want to warn them that the East Side, which is Detroit, I'm in Grand Rapids, which is considered the West. But when the East Side vote, it will. Michigan will go blue, and this time the East time they're on their mark and they're ready. So for everybody who think that Michigan is on Donald Trump's side, well, no, not this time. Just
okay, Professor DeLeo.
Right, I think Eve is right. That when Democrats on the East Side show up, Democrats have a much better chance. And I don't doubt that Eve doesn't see Trump signs in Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is an interesting part of the state. It's in Kent County in West Michigan, which has traditionally been very Republican, and a different kind of Republican, if you will. If there's and folks might not like that I call it this, but if there's a Bible Belt in Michigan, it's out west. And you get more Christian conservatives over there. For instance, in the 2016 Republican primary, Ted Cruz won many counties out west, but Kent County is changing. Much like Oakland County on the east side, we're seeing that those two counties become more diverse, and with that, more Democratic. So it doesn't surprise me that there aren't Trump signs in Grand Rapids, but I bet if you go out in concentric circles, you'll see a bunch of them out in the further reaches of Kent County.
Newaygo, Michigan. Kevin?
That last caller, as far as not seeing too many Trump signs in Grand Rapids, I'm in Newaygo County, which is one county north of Kent, and I guess she doesn't get in the outskirts of the towns because in like Wyoming and Cutlerville, Granville, there's all kinds of Trump signs. I mean, like twice or three times more than there was last election. And up north here from Newaygo County north, it's nothing but Trump country. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Professor DeLeo?
I think that's that. Yeah, I think that's accurate. I would make, with one exception maybe, or two. I think if you get into Muskegon, which is a industrial town on the west coast of Michigan, and we had a caller from Leelanau not too long ago. Leelanau County is generally a Democratic county, more affluent. Folks from downstate, many of them have second homes up in Leelanau County, and that's a place that has some Democratic support. But the caller from Newaygo is right that the further north you go, or if you get up into the northern part of the Lower Peninsula, and certainly the Upper Peninsula, lots of Trump support, and that it's that fervent Trump support with signs and flags outwardly supporting the president.
And who are these voters? What are the demographics?
It's white, rural is really the two key ones, where and I would leave it at that. Right? I mean, it's really that's the kind of country that's up from Newaygo north. lots of farming, lots of agriculture as well.
Heartland, Michigan. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead.
Yes, I'm voting more so against socialism. I'm voting against illegal immigration. I'm voting against infanticide. So therefore, I have decided to vote for Trump. My biggest concern in Michigan will be the amount of voter fraud that we will have. We have a Democrat governor. We have a Democrat attorney general. I just saw on another station that a huge batch of votes were found in the trash, and coincidentally, they were all Trump votes. So my belief is that Michigan will do whatever it takes to ensure a win for Biden, whether it's legal, illegal, or whatever they have to do. They'll lie, cheat, and steal, but they'll make sure Biden wins this state.
Professor Dewey.
I'm not sure if I saw the same. Report, but I did read, I believe this morning, that there were some ballots that were found to be discarded. The number was between 10 or 12, and 7 of them were for Trump. I read that in the newspaper this morning. I'm not sure if that's the same report that the caller is referring to. But I would also say that here's again a female voter who maybe we wouldn't assume would vote for Donald Trump, but the issues that she cares about match up with the president.
Saginaw, Michigan. Eddie, good morning. Eddie, who are you supporting?
Well, I'm a natural Democrat, which I've been voting Democrat all my life. But Trump do look pretty good. He one thing I can say about Trump, he's not your everyday politician. So, he's not that. And we've been so used to seeing a straight-leg politician doing the same thing every 4 years. But my question to Dave is, where do they be getting these poll numbers from? And how many people is taking this poll? I mean, do they go from state to state, or how do that work? And just like Dave said, now I stay in Saginaw, like on the east side, but when you start venturing out like toward Midland, Freeland, out in them rural areas, just like he said, it's Trump, Trump, Trump signs everywhere. And up around my area, I don't even hardly see no Biden signs or Trump signs. Not as much as I would if I drove out to Freeland, Michigan, or Midland, Michigan. So, like I said, I just like to know when they come to the polls, I be hearing all these different stations talking about the polls has got Biden by 3 or Trump by 4. How many people do they pick or get to come up with this decision? Thank you.
Eddie, it's a great question, and it's one that's been on the mind of a lot of voters since 2016, when the polls, at least in states like Michigan and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even Ohio, were off the mark. They didn't get the result correct, and some of it may have to do with the number of people who are surveyed. And to point to that particular answer, Eddie, it depends on the poll. Sometimes you'll see in the Free Press poll that Todd Spangler talked about earlier this hour, there were 600 voters. Sometimes you'll see it go up to 1,000 or 1,200. And the key part of any poll, when we're talking about trying to predict an election result, is the sample. And the most important piece of that is to predict what turnout is going to look like on Election Day. So pollsters have to guess or estimate how many people and what kinds of people, with what characteristics are going to turn out on Election Day. And that was why the polls were off in Michigan in 2016. The polls before Election Day had oversampled relative to turnout, oversampled Wayne County and undersampled places up north.
Glenn is in Detroit. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Greta. How you doing? And to your guests. Yes,
I woke up election morning when Trump won, but I wasn't mad at Trump. I voted for Hillary. We had a problem with our clerk, and we had a problem with 70% of our absentee ballots were thrown out because they couldn't be counted. Even Jill Stein came here and said it was a hot mess. Trump only won by 11,000 votes. If they could have counted any of our votes, if they could have counted half of the votes, Hillary Clinton would have been president of the United States. Now, we got to make sure in Detroit that doesn't happen again. Hillary didn't come here. She didn't set up booths to send people knocking door to door. She just assumed she had the vote. So at least Biden is more liked than Hillary, but I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. And I don't know all these people talking about socialism because, we already got social programs in place right now that they enjoy. So that's my take on it. And have a great day.
Well, I think I would agree with the statement that Biden is more well-liked than Hillary Clinton. And that's here in Michigan as well as across the country. I have not seen a report that indicates that 70,000 absentee ballots weren't counted in Detroit. That's not to say that there weren't issues with Election Day and election administration in 2016. There certainly were, but I don't believe that I've seen any evidence that would indicate that 70,000 votes weren't counted.
David's also in Detroit. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Greta and Washington Journal. Washington Journal. And to our friend from Oakland University, you're at the wrong university. You should come on down south to the University of Detroit. Anyway, what I wanted to say is, like last night, I went and I got my signs. So my signs are proudly displayed in front of my house that says Biden and Harris. And there is no scientific poll that you can rule out that signs will drive people to the ballot. But let me just say this, and my final thoughts on this. In 2016, I have always, volunteered and knocked on doors and put signs in front of people's houses. Yes, I would have to agree with the lady from Detroit that was just two speakers before me. We were very anemic here in Detroit. But I don't see that in 2020. I see an enthusiasm. I can feel the energy. I can feel that people here in Detroit are going to get out and they're going to do what they're supposed to do, and we're going to drive people to the polls. And I believe that if we can turn out Detroit, I believe that Michigan will go to blue. I don't believe that took place in 2016. So for all of you people who live north, and you feel this passion about a man who was taking advantage of you, a man who can give he wouldn't give anything for you. I'm a veteran. I was very offended when that comment that came out in the Atlantic that said that we were losers and that my son is in the Air Force. No, ma'am. I don't believe in Trump. I don't believe in nothing that man says. And if you are the one who would take a shuckster, a cockwomble, and you want to vote for him, go ahead. And when COVID gets you, that's too bad.
Professor DiIulio, his first remarks about the state of play in Michigan.
Sure, and first I would say to the caller, thank you for your service, and really the state of play. And caller said he went and got a sign and is now proudly displaying it in his yard. I think that again is some evidence, at least with this one individual, to say there is some energy behind the Biden-Harris ticket, and that was probably not there in 2016. Certainly citywide in Detroit, there was not the enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton that they needed. Now, the question is, was that inherent, or could the Clinton campaign have bumped up their numbers by frankly paying more attention to Detroit, which, as I said before, they generally ignored the state until the very last minute. And then they were in Grand Rapids, which doesn't make any sense to me. That's a Republican stronghold, except for the city of Grand Rapids. But the Clinton campaign should have been in Detroit the weekend before Election Day, and they weren't. Biden campaign and the Democratic Party, by all accounts, are doing things to try and not repeat that scenario.
Who are the surrogates that each campaign is relying on to energize and get out their voters in Michigan?
Sure. We've seen Jill Biden here. We've seen a couple of the president's children here, a few others, but it's really been the candidates and their closest surrogates that have been here in Michigan.
Polly in Rochester, Michigan. Hi, Polly.
Yes. What is all this propaganda that I'm hearing? I called this number that they showed me on TV to support Trump, and then I get all of this propaganda. What is this? Is this the wrong number to call to support Trump then?
You're a Michigan voter, so we put you on the line for Michigan voters, but you absolutely say who you're voting for.
Yes, Trump.
Okay.
Absolutely. But why was all that other stuff on while I was holding? And I was listening to all these people who are so misinformed, they don't understand.
Well,
that,
Polly, you were listening to other people's opinions, people who don't agree, I guess, with you. That's the nature of the program.
I thought that this number, I would just call it, and my vote would go in for Trump. I don't want to hear anybody else's misinformed. These people.
Okay, well then I suggest you turn the channel, because on this program you're gonna hear all different types of viewpoints. Thomas in East China, Michigan. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, I'm calling to let you know everybody's talking about all this stuff, but they forget to talk about coronavirus. You know, we got over 200-some-thousand people dead and counting, and there's nothing to be done in the capitulation of the fights over PPE equipment and all the other stuff that Trump did not put in executive orders on, just letting it ride, said everything's fine. So, you know, just take it from there. I mean, that's the way it is. I'm a Biden supporter, and, you know, so if you like, you know, nothing getting done about coronas and 1,000 people dying every day, go for it.
Professor Dooley.
Well, I think the caller hit, the caller hit on an issue that is also really important here in Michigan, the coronavirus response, and I think that Michigan's a little different in terms of the politics here, because we've had the president criticize our governor, Governor Whitmer, and Governor Whitmer has not been shy about punching back. We've seen that basically from March through yesterday, when she signed a letter asking for a congressional inquiry along with Governor Cuomo in New York over the president's handling of the coronavirus. And Governor Whitmer has pretty strong standing here in Michigan. The Free Press poll that Todd Spangler talked about earlier in the hour had showed that she's got 57% job approval, but that doesn't mean that she's been without criticism during the response. One of those criticisms had to do with a contract for contact tracing during the early months of the pandemic that initially went to a firm tied into Democratic candidates that was going to have a bunch of data about people that had been contracted or that had contracted COVID-19, and she eventually had to cancel that. And there's some debate over who had signed off on that. I'm not sure that we really got to the answer on that one. The governor has taken some heat over the lockdowns, then the severity of the lockdowns. Some would call them severe here in Michigan, and I think too that some would look at the nursing home policy that was put in place. I believe around a third of all deaths in Michigan from COVID-19 have been in nursing homes. So there are certainly questions to be asked of the governor and the administration. And that really just leads into more of the back and forth between the White House and the governor's office, between President Trump and Governor Whitmer, as well as other folks here in Michigan.
Ypsilanti, Michigan. Dwayne, who are you supporting?
Oh, there's only one person to support, Joe Biden. I can't support a criminal. He's a criminal. All these people, you can tell where they get all their talking points. They're Fox people. They've drank the Kool-Aid. And as far as the northern, let's go to northern redneck. There's no population up there. There's nobody with any brain cells up there. Donald Trump is a criminal. He said he's a great businessman. 6 bankruptcies. He's a failure. And we're not even talking about, the other man was talking about COVID. He's a failure, a disgrace to this country. His first to worst, Donnie. That's what you've done for us. Great job. There is only one candidate, along with the 500 people in intelligence that say he should never be elected again. He should have never been elected. Thank you for your.
All right, David Dulio, let's end here because the House is going to gavel in for a pro forma session in a few minutes by just going over what you're watching for on election night in the state of Michigan and where our viewers should be watching in the state.
Sure. I think there are a number of factors and dynamics that are important. Turnout is at the top of the list, and I think that turnout in some key places. The city of Detroit has got to be at the top of that list. If Democrats get their numbers, their targets out of Detroit, they're in strong position. If the president can drive turnout in places where he is strong, it is good news for him. There are, and I think that in Michigan, this is a turnout election. Whoever does a better job of turning their people out probably wins. I think you have to look at those 12 counties like Macomb, Saginaw, Bay, that had a plurality vote for Obama in 2012 and then flipped to Trump. Do they stay with Trump? Do they go back to blue? And what the margins are there. So I think that it's really about turnout, really, at the end of the day.
And what about the coming weeks before election night? What will you be watching?
Well, I think the messaging from both candidates, the attempts from the Biden campaign to eat into the Trump lead in some places of the state, as I mentioned before, like Macomb County. And I would also note too the number of absentee ballots that are turned in. We know that well over 2 million have already been requested. That number is probably going to still go up. We'll have to track the number that have been returned to know how many are getting close to that election day cutoff, or if the courts, if the current court decision stands, if absentee ballots can get counted beyond election day. Our Secretary of State a week or two ago said something to the effect of it may not be election night, but election week here in Michigan. So we may not know who wins Michigan's 16 electoral votes until well after November 3rd.
And down ballot, what are the key races to be watching in Michigan in the Senate and House races?
Sure. We have a hotly contested U.S. Senate race between John James, the Republican challenger, and incumbent Senator Gary Peters. That race has also tightened. There's a pretty significant air war between the two campaigns, as well as their allies, over issues like health care and economy, pretty standard issues. But that is a race that is probably also going to go down to the wire. We have two congressional races that are probably competitive, won by Democrats last time, the 8th District, the 11th District, that were held by Republicans in the prior Congress, flipped to the Democrats. They're trying to keep those seats and fight off challenges from Republicans. Okay. And then there's one race out west that has a Republican, and it's an open seat created by Justin Amash, giving up his House seat. A bit of a battle there as well.
All right. David Dulio, professor at Oakland University, political science professor, thanks for your time.
Sure.
The House is going to come in for a quick pro forma session. We'll bring you there now. When we return, we'll talk about the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who will lie in state today at the U.S. Capitol, becoming the first woman to do so.